Hey there, everybody. Welcome to this episode of the Higher Ed Geek Podcast, episode number 72 with Kirsten Brinlee from Baltimore Collegetown. Really excited I got the chance to talk with her. It's an organization that I've really been supportive of since moving to the city, and appreciate their making space for higher ed community here, bringing all the institutions together just to learn and grow from each other and connect, and just generally have kind of good vibes and good times. So definitely go check out the work that they're doing. We'll link to it in the show notes and everything else that Kirsten mentions. Really appreciate her sharing her story and all the things that she's geeking out about. I think it'll all be really good stuff for folks to go check out that I think will be helpful for them as well. And just a heads up, next episode, so 2 weeks from now, will be the last episode of this season. We'll just do a quick wrap-up episode, but I'll be going off the air for the holiday season and coming back in 2020. So look forward to that. But without further ado, this is episode number 72 with Kirsten Brinlee. I'm really excited to talk more about the work that you're doing, because I know I've been kind of partaking in Baltimore Collegetown's events and stuff, and my wife also, with her work at her institution, is involved with your organization as well. So I'm excited to hear more about your story and your work with Baltimore Collegetown. But we'll start off here, as we always do, if you want to introduce yourself and give a brief overview of your professional journey and how you got to be where you are today.
Thanks so much, Dustin. I really am honored to be here today and excited to talk with you. My name is Kirsten Brinlee, and I am the Executive Director of the Baltimore Collegetown Network. And my professional journey in higher education started as a graduate student at the University of North Texas. And I had moved back to the Dallas area. That's where I graduated from high school, and was looking to complete a master's degree in public administration. And I found the program at UNT, but knew that I wanted a strong connection to the campus. And so even though I was living in Arlington and commuting to Denton, which is about a 45-minute to an hour drive, I still wanted to have an on-campus job because I had had so much fun as an undergraduate doing work with student affairs. And so I applied for and got the graduate assistantship position in leadership and service. It was a brand new office, and so I had a lot of autonomy as the graduate assistant to create new programs, to try new and different things. And I had the really lucky opportunity that our vice president for student affairs at the time cared a lot about leadership and said, I have some money that I really want to invest in leadership programming. And so my boss at the time had experience with the Leadership Institute. Mm-hmm. And so we were able to create a Leadership Institute for the University of North Texas while I was there. And just going through that process of recruiting students for the program, creating a new program, kind of this new signature campus event was really, really exciting. And then I was also able to create a large day of service modeled after the big event. And that was, again, just another really wonderful opportunity as a 23, 24-year-old to create new programs at a big state institution and really make those kind of legacy experiences for students. And then in 2012, I moved to Baltimore, and I was applying for jobs kind of in all different sectors because I had this master's degree in public administration. So I was interested in working in local government, but at the time, the most of the job opportunities were in higher education, just because the recession had hit the government a little bit later. So there were more university jobs than there were government jobs. And so I ended up working at Johns Hopkins University for my first 2 years in Baltimore. It just so happened that they were looking for someone who had experience planning large service events and working with student organizations. And so my experience at North Texas was really a perfect fit for this, again, another newly created position at the Johns Hopkins Center for Social Concern at the Homewood campus. And I knew pretty much nothing about Baltimore. I knew that they had good seafood, and I knew that it got kind of humid in the summers, but that was about it. So my first 6 weeks, I was planning a large day of service that's called the President's Day of Service. It's a signature event that happens every fall on campus. And I think that year, we had about maybe 35, 40 partners that all needed supplies. They needed students to go to their different projects, and they were located all across the Baltimore region. So I learned Baltimore really quickly, and that experience of planning that huge day of service was completely instrumental in helping me get connected to different nonprofit organizations, community organizations all across the city. And also in my role at Hopkins, I got to sit on a regional conference planning committee, which is where I first met Baltimore Collegetown, and they were recruiting for their Leadership Institute. And I was like, I know leadership. I want to learn more about what they're doing, because I hadn't heard of, a model where it wasn't only hosted at, one university. And so I introduced myself to the then executive director, Kirsten McGuire, and got to know her and learn more about how their program brought students from 12 different campuses together to do the Leadership Institute, but then they also added on these extra retreats. And then that year I became the Johns Hopkins campus liaison to Baltimore Collegetown. And then the following year I got to participate as a cluster facilitator. And then the year after that, their program manager for the leadership program took another job. And so they had a position that opened up. And I wasn't quite ready to leave Hopkins because I had only been there 2 years, but it was really the perfect fit of my interests in leadership development. And they were also interested in starting a new program that was based off of this idea of getting students more connected to Baltimore, but in a shorter time commitment. So a long weekend, a spring break, something like that, which I was also doing at Hopkins. So in 2014, I started with Baltimore Collegetown, and my primary roles and responsibilities were to oversee the leadership program, and then also create this new program that became Collegetown Underground, which is a 4-day experience for students to learn more about Baltimore in an intimate and really connected way. And I, grew both of those programs and had a really wonderful time leading those programs and being a part of the organization. And then in 2017, at the end of 2017, our executive director took a position with a local foundation. And so I applied for and interviewed for and got the executive director role in early 2018. And so I've been in that position for about a little over a year and a half now, kind of seeing all the ins and outs of the organization. It's been a really great growth opportunity for me. And I think I'm going into a new strategic plan with our board that we're finalizing at the end of this year to identify areas of focus for the organization. So it's a really exciting time to be at Baltimore Collegetown, but also just me personally. It's been a really great organization that's helped me with my own personal and professional growth.
Yeah, and it's just, to me, like, I haven't seen like this model anywhere else. So I'm just like so kind of enamored with just like the way that you work with all the institutions in the city just to make Baltimore like more appealing for college students to attend and to stay, to work and live and all that, and just supporting all those students and the work that all the professionals are doing. And so much good stuff that you do. And just for me, really too, like having a place for higher ed community, in Baltimore City is great. So, yeah, a lot of cool things that you'll do there. And you kind of, I guess, alluded to it already, but I'm curious, maybe anything else that comes to mind, like, because it seems like you've had a lot of connective tissue in terms of like the jobs that you've done and everything of, service, leadership, and all that. So I'm curious, like, anything else in terms of your own undergraduate college experience, like what still always is like coming up in terms of things that you learned or connections that you made, or anything like that, like what's still resonating with you personally and or professionally from your own college experience?
The first thing that comes to mind are my two mentors from the University of Oklahoma, Kui and Kristen. And if you went to University of Oklahoma around the same time that I did, them, like they were kind of larger than life figures on campus. And I think that they instilled in me this strong sense of self-belief that I can do big things as a student. And I feel like our mantra, I was part of the Campus Activities Council, which planned all large scale events. And our mantra, our motto was make it happen. And that really was true. I had a lot of experience and opportunity as a student just to try new things and do big things. And had a lot of support from Clea and Kristen. And I feel like they really served as a model to me on what a professional looks like and how you can be kind and open-hearted and, you know, have your door open, but still do really high quality and important and amazing work. And I think that has been just an inspirational thread that has been throughout my career of having really wonderful bosses and mentors throughout higher education, of folks that believe in the power of what students can do and create an atmosphere where they foster and encourage that.
Very cool. Yeah, and that's what I think, like, just the power that like one individual can have to like just really inspire and motivate people and serve as that role model is always cool to hear. And I guess then, you kind of brought us all the way through to the work that you're currently doing. And I guess, again, to me, it feels very unique as like an organization and the work that you do. So like, anything that comes to mind in terms of just like what you enjoy most about it, because it obviously does really connect with everything you've done professionally up to this point and your educational background, all that. So, I guess just anything you feel like is maybe unique about what you're currently doing that you maybe enjoy most, any one thing or many things, whatever comes to mind.
Yeah, I think, to your point earlier, it really is unique in the sense that it's super place-based. So we're very much focused on the Baltimore region. We partner with local nonprofits, we partner with government, we partner with businesses and higher education to achieve our programs, our goals, our initiatives. And really what I love the most about working at a higher ed consortia like Baltimore Collegetown is just the ability to bring people together around similar topics. It's no secret that the world is in challenging times right now. And I think our work culture is getting harder and harder. There's so much competing for folks' attention and resources and time that collaborative work is really one of the best ways to mitigate those challenges that we're currently facing. It helps, one, just to remind us that we're not alone, which is so important, and that a lot of our institutions face the same challenges or are having the same conversations, and to bring them outside of their campus space together with folks that are either doing some of the same work, or if we're bringing together students who are having the same need to find a job, an internship, or develop their leadership skills. Just knowing that they're not alone in their search and their quest for their own personal and professional development is really helpful. But then also in a very practical sense, we can convene folks who want to share resources and can combine what they have together to achieve something that they couldn't do on their own, which is, how we are able to operate a shuttle system that brings 5 campuses together and takes students to local destinations. That's something that the universities may not be able to offer on their own, but together, collectively, they can. So I think that just this ability to bring people together and to share resources is really powerful, and we'll only need more of that as we kind of continue on and go into the future.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, like, it really stuck in my head because like so much in terms of like higher ed conferences, like there's so much knowledge sharing and collaboration that happens in that space, but it's just like, one and done for like annual conferences and maybe local ones, but something so like kind of omnipresent and consistent and ongoing, like the work that you're doing is just really neat to see. That it's something that I enjoy about higher ed is that it's, on one hand, it is competitive to a certain extent. There's only so many students who maybe can enroll, at any given time or moment, but people in higher ed do tend to be, generous with their time and giving advice and, helping each other. So helping to have some consistent structure for that really does feel very, very valuable.
Absolutely.
Well, then on to, just sort of what's on your mind, whether it's, personal or professional or, again, just whatever kind of sticks out the most. I'm very curious, like, what do you geek out about? Like, if it is, if it is just like hobbies, fun stuff or things that are just grabbing your attention that may be more connected to the work that you do every day. But, yeah, just kind of broadly, like, what are you geeking out about right now? And maybe if it is like something new to you or something that you've always been into. Yeah, I'm just curious to know.
Yeah, I have been telling everyone who is interested in social change to read Emergent Strategy by Adrienne Maree Brown. It's a book that came out about 2 years ago, and it is a facilitation guide and a roadmap for how we can bring people together to create a future that doesn't exist currently. And I just geek out about it all the time, and I feel like I'm constantly coming back to the principles. And it's something that I share with students, my friends, random strangers. I just tell everyone about it because I think that it's really important work. And I am a true student of leadership, so I do geek out about any new thought about leadership or positive psychology, community building, how to be a better person, better human. I think about all of those things a lot. And I'm listening to podcasts about that too. So I think that that's what I probably geek out about the most, which is very related and connected to my work. I'm also trying to become a better plant person. I have a lot of house plants and I'm trying to get better at taking care of them. So thinking through where I should put certain plants and which ones get the most light. I think about that a lot now too. But I would say those are kind of the two things that preoccupy a lot of my time. And now that it's getting a little bit cooler, the weather's starting to change a little bit. I feel like I cook a lot more in the winter. So coming up with new recipes and things like that are some of the things on my mind.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'm curious in terms of being, the student of leadership, do you find yourself being attracted and kind of because I guess I'm trying to get to kind of how you are perhaps kind of self-guiding your kind of educational journey here. Would you say you read more, listen to podcasts more? Have you gone to conferences, taken any online courses? How do you see that taking shape? Because I think that we're certainly in a really positive time right now in terms of there being no shortage of, sort of resources out there and people just needing to maybe find what modality works best for them or, what type of kind of leadership theory or something, resonates most with them. But what has that been like for you, I guess, now being, out of school for a while, I assume, or I don't know if you have started to go back to take any courses or just kind of take stuff that's maybe recommended by others?
Yeah, that's a good question. I participated in the ULab online course, which is offered through MIT. And the theory, it's called Theory U, and it's also about social change making. And that was facilitated by a local nonprofit in Baltimore called the Impact Hub. And they had cohorts essentially participate in the online platform. It was offered through EDX. But we would also have some in-person gatherings. And that was a really great experience for me. I've done some other EDX courses as well on positive psychology, the study of happiness, and some others that are about kind of workplace culture. I'm a big fan of Brene Brown, and she, a few years back, offered a lot of online courses. So I definitely am someone who likes online courses. I still like learning in a classroom type setting. So those have been really instructional for me. And I do listen to a ton of podcasts. I'm currently listening to one called Hurry Slowly that I love, which is a lot about work and workplace culture and motivation, but also personal well-being and how we can just optimize our performance in a way that feels holistic and healthy. And I really have been enjoying that. But yeah, I don't get to go to too many conferences because I think that there's not really a conference for what I do outside of there's an association for collaborative leadership that hosts its annual conference in October. And there are other higher ed consortia that gather. And that has been a wonderful group for professional development for me. But outside of that conference, it's more kind of either something that's very Baltimore specific. So I love to go with my staff to, big Baltimore based conferences, things like Beta City, or business volunteers just hosted a Business Impact Summit. And those types of events have been really helpful in both building relationships for Collegetown, but also just getting a little bit more connected to what's happening in Baltimore. But as far as kind of national conferences go, we tend not to get out to those. So doing online classes for me has been a great part of my own professional development. And then also just connecting with my other higher ed consortia colleagues through ACL, and continuing to be plugged into what's happening in Baltimore.
Yeah. Yeah, I've kind of felt like I took a break from national conferences, or really many conferences, for a couple of years, and kind of having the itch to go back, but trying to figure out like what feels the most worth the time and the money and like those sort of things. So in lieu of that, there's so many good kind of like asynchronous, courses and different things. And then also, things that are more like locally oriented do feel like a little bit more useful. But and I think, when you do have the opportunity, like if anybody has that chance of doing something that's kind of the hybrid of like, you can take a course and engage with learning materials online, but have like essentially a meetup with the people that you're taking the course with to discuss things and, go through it. I think that can be like super effective as well, if not, doing wholly one or the other. It's cool.
Right.
Like once you're making connections with people, it's like you can start to get like recommendations for things, or just kind of learn from each other too. But, that's pretty cool stuff. So like anything in terms of, like anything that you're like watching, listening to, reading, any like other specific resources that you'd want to recommend. And I guess just like trying to kind of capture, with any of these, these hobbies, kind of still generally like the things that you're kind of spending time on to fulfill yourself personally and or professionally. I guess just anything in terms of like how you see it kind of positively contributing to your life. Because I think it is like, in terms of like cooking or like, like nurturing houseplants and all that, it's like, it's like you don't have to do that. You could like have no plants and you could like order in food all the time or do whatever, like it's like you are spending time and energy and like, your kind of thought power doing that. So just anything in terms of resources that you'd want to recommend specifically, and then just kind of how you're sort of viewing all these different things that you're doing and the value that they're bringing to your life. Anything that kind of resonates there. We can obviously kind of keep digging in deeper with stuff as it makes sense. But anything that comes to mind.
Absolutely. So since becoming the ED, I have been really mindful of my mental energy and where that goes. And so the biggest thing that I've added to my life in the last year and a half has been a pretty regular meditation practice. So I meditate in the morning for at least 10 minutes every day. And sometimes I'll do meditations at night as well. And I use Insight Timer. It's a free resource and I recommend it to lots of folks. There's lots of other good meditation apps out there now, Calm, Headspace, but I use Insight Timer. And I also I've been practicing yoga for pretty consistently for the last 7 years and have just kind of really reinvested in my yoga practice. I had foot surgery this year, so I was unable to do yoga for a while, but it's really the one exercise that I've been able to bring back into my life, and I can still, kind of go full force at it. And so I am reading right now the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, which again just kind of deepens the experience of doing yoga, and it helps make what the teachers say in class make a little bit more sense. So I'm reading that, and then I'm also reading Eat, Pray, Love, which is a book that I kind of resisted for a really long time because I thought it would be cheesy and not super helpful to read, but I'm really enjoying it. And I think, it took me, that book came out, I think when I was in high school. So it's, taken me, 10 plus years, 15 years. But it's been kind of fun to like read. And then I'm still in the Italy part, which is all about food and pleasure. But I'm excited to get into the deeper part when she starts doing her own yoga practice. I think that those two together will be really fun. I don't watch a ton of TV, but I kind of pretty consistently watch John Oliver And I just finished the OA series because I was curious about it after Netflix canceled it and there was the big uproar. So I was like, well, if it was that good, maybe I should watch it. And it is really that good. So I just finished that series. And then the one thing that I think kind of is so people are surprised that I watch is Bob's Burgers. And I just freaking love it. It's so funny. And it's so absurd, and it just makes me laugh every time. And so I'm glad that that's back on. I watched that on Hulu, and so it's a nice kind of like mental break, and it's just like silly and good-natured and fun, and I love it. So that's kind of, what I'm reading and what I'm watching. And then as far as podcasts, I know I mentioned Hurry Slowly, but I also am kind of a diehard listener and fan of On Being and Radio Lab, anything that Malcolm Gladwell does. So Broken Record is, I think, the thing that's coming out currently. And then Adrienne Marie Brown does a podcast with her sister called How to Survive the End of the World that I really love. And she's the author of Emergent Strategy. So I would say that that's kind of my outside of work time, how I spend it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it is like all those things, like it is just a weird, and maybe it's especially like an American kind of affliction or whatever, is that like that idea of like, you have to just be like working all the time, like never rest, like your only value is your like economic output kind of thing. But like that stress and that kind of rushed, stressed nature, you end up limiting yourself, especially if you're trying to like multitask with so many different things. And it seems like so much for you, like you're saying, like clearing your mind, trying to get somewhere fast by focusing and, kind of being a lot more thoughtful that way. And really just kind of that overriding philosophy, I think, is where more people need to go, because like you're almost getting into this weird kind of twisty loop where you end up kind of limiting yourself by, again, trying to just be so, rushed all the time. So it's interesting, just with you kind of having this, career pathway, getting to a point of, helping to lead a team and, kind of just direct the entire organization. And just, it could be something where you just stress yourself out, even if it's like, just find something to worry about, but it's like, you're going to meditate, clear your mind, focus, and just like take things easy, nurture yourself and in your mind. And so it's always refreshing to hear, and a reminder. I feel like it comes up for me to like, my brain just often does find something to worry about, and I at least have the self-awareness to just be like, hey, like it's okay, don't need to worry about that. Like, but it still hops around to things, and I just have to kind of, go through that exercise of, working through it. But so yeah, it's cool to hear, from somebody kind of in your position of how that's, been working out for you.
Absolutely.
Well, then, to kind of wrap up the episode on a kind of similarly optimistic and positive note, what is something, or are some things that you are looking forward to in your job, life, and or the world? So I feel like you've been like hitting on all the points so far pretty well. So if you want to take the challenge of like one of each category, something in your job, something in your life, something in the world that you're looking forward to, you'll just hit perfect batting average here. You'll just be rocking it. So.
Yeah, I think the general theme for me is always growth. I'm always looking for opportunities to learn, to grow, and just kind of adding this idea of adding layers to my thinking. I love meeting new people in higher ed in Baltimore. So I would say those are kind of my two general themes for what I'm looking forward to. There's a lot of really good stuff that Baltimore Collegetown is doing. We have these really cool events where we're highlighting different industries in Baltimore and connecting students to those, and those will take place in spring of 2020. So I'm really excited about events like that, because it really does kind of meet this need of students looking for jobs, and bringing in cool industries that are really thriving in Baltimore. So that's the one thing that I'm looking forward to in my job. In life, I would say, just again, continuing to grow, learn new things. And I really do believe a lot in the power of self-growth, enhancing world growth. So this idea of if I can, do my own self-work and inner work, that can be transformative in the world as well. So just this idea of continuing to grow and add layers, new learning, and then continue to meet all of the awesome people that are here in Baltimore doing great work that are connected to and through our institutes of higher learning. There's a lot of great people here that come to Baltimore for higher education, to study and to work. And so it's fun to get to connect with all of them through Baltimore Collegetown.
Yeah, for sure. And as my wife always kind of ribs me for, because it's like, you're like, oh yeah, and like layers, like an onion. It's like, no, it's like layers like a parfait. It's more pleasant and sweet, But
yes, I love that.
But I think that is, because it's like that like we were even saying before, like the power that one person can have to like inspire and motivate and all that. And like, if you're working on yourself and growing yourself and, just existing in a more sort of mindful way and, interacting with people in a more positive and just like empathetic, understanding way, it can really, kind of broaden and kind of ripple out that impact and everything. And just that, especially with like a huge player like Johns Hopkins, but even, place like Micah that's more specialized and smaller, just like bringing everybody together and kind of valuing this kind of mosaic of institutions and all the great people that work at them and the students that attend them. And again, it really is just the fact of like, again, finding your organization and seeing like something like this, which, does exist, I think, in pockets around the country that, it can work out. It just was really clicked some things into my mind in terms of just like how higher ed can really drive greater outcomes moving forward by like working better together, because students are always going to transfer. But then again, like I said, like we do a lot of knowledge sharing anyway. So how do we make those things kind of more, persistent and everything? So it's really been inspiring for me, just kind of broadly, and like a really good example that I feel like I cite often. So I appreciate the work that you're doing there, and appreciate you taking time out to hang out for the podcast real quick and share all that you did. I'll definitely have everything that we talked about in this episode down in the show notes and ways to connect with Collegetown and all that. So, again, thank you so much. This is a really great conversation. I'm glad we got to have it.
Me too. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and look forward to seeing you soon.
This podcast is part of the ConnectEDU Podcast Network, bringing together diverse voices in the higher ed community. Check us out on Twitter at ConnectEDUPod or at connectedu.network. Thanks for listening to this episode of the podcast. Make sure to rate, review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode of the Higher Ed Geek Podcast.